On the morning of June 12, 1969, something impossible happened at the edge of New York State. The roar stopped. For the first time in over 12,000 years, the American Falls at Niagara went silent. No thunder, no mist, no 6 million cubic feet of water crashing every minute against ancient stone. Just stillness. Where one of Earth's most powerful waterfalls had raged for millennia, there was now exposed rock, dry, jagged, and disturbingly quiet. And in that silence, the riverbed began to reveal what the water had been hiding. Coins. Thousands of them. Wishes tossed by tourists, frozen in time across the bare stone. But the coins weren't what made the workers stop. It was the bones. Human remains, scattered among the rocks, preserved beneath the falls that had claimed them. Some were recent. Others had been there far longer than anyone wanted to imagine. This is the story of the summer America stopped Niagara Falls and discovered that beneath one of the world's greatest wonders lay a graveyard no one was prepared to face. To understand what happened in 1969, you first have to understand what Niagara Falls actually is. It's not just a waterfall. It's a geological machine, a living, evolving force that has been slowly carving its way through the Earth for 18,000 years. When the last ice age ended and the glaciers pulled back from North America, they left behind the Great Lakes. And as those lakes drained toward the Atlantic, the water found a cliff. That cliff became Niagara. Every second, more than 700,000 gallons of water pour over its edge. The mist rises hundreds of feet into the air. The sound can be heard miles away, a low, constant thunder that never stops. Or at least, it never used to stop. For centuries, indigenous peoples lived near the falls, weaving it into their spiritual traditions. The Haudenosaunee called it Ongiara, the Strait. To them, it was sacred, untouchable. When Father Louis Hennepin became the first European to see the falls in 1678, he described it in almost apocalyptic terms, a vision of raw power that words couldn't contain. And from that moment on, the world became obsessed. By the 19th century, Niagara Falls had become a destination. Honeymooners, daredevils, industrialists, they all came. But beneath the spectacle, something was wrong. And by the 1960s, it had become impossible to ignore. At the base of the American Falls, hidden beneath the churning water, there was a growing pile of rock. Geologists called it a talis, a mound of boulders and debris that had fallen from the cliff face over decades. Natural erosion, the slow crumbling of stone under the weight of endless water. From above, you couldn't see it clearly, but experts knew it was there, and they were worried. The talus had grown so large that some believed it was fundamentally changing the shape of the falls. The water no longer dropped in a clean, dramatic curtain. It tumbled awkwardly over a slope of broken rock. Some feared the debris was destabilizing the cliff itself. Others worried the falls were losing their grandeur. Tourists had started to notice. So had conservationists. Something had to be done. In 1965, a joint commission between the United States and Canada commissioned a study. The question was simple. Could the talus be removed? Could the American Falls be restored to their original glory? But answering that question required something no one had ever attempted. They would have to stop the waterfall. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was given a task that bordered on absurd. Build a dam, not to hold back a river, but to hold back one of the most powerful waterfalls on the planet. The plan was audacious. Engineers would construct a temporary cofferdam stretching 600 feet from the American shoreline to Goat Island, the landmass that separates the American Falls from the larger Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side. This dam wouldn't stop all of Niagara's water. That would have been impossible. Instead, it would redirect the flow, diverting every drop that normally poured over the American Falls to the Horseshoe Falls next door. For the first time in recorded history, the American Falls would go dry. The work began in early June of 1969. Truck after truck rolled onto Goat Island, each one carrying tons of rock and earth. Over 1,200 loads, 27,000 tons of material. Workers labored around the clock under the roar of the adjacent Horseshoe Falls, which now carried the full fury of Niagara's flow. Slowly, the cofferdam rose, and slowly, the American Falls began to die. The water thinned, the mist faded, the thunder grew quieter. Then, on June 12, 1969, it stopped entirely. No photograph or newsreel can truly capture what it was like to stand at Niagara Falls that summer and hear nothing. For generations, the sound had been constant, an ever-present wall of noise that vibrated through your chest, drowned out conversation, and reminded you that nature was in control. Now, there was only wind. The exposed riverbed looked alien, a lunar landscape of slick gray rock, pockmarked and jagged. Pools of stagnant water sat in the crevices. Algae clung to boulders that hadn't seen sunlight in centuries. Tourists gathered by the thousands at the observation points. They didn't know what to say. Some called it eerie. Others called it haunting. A few called it wrong. And down on the riverbed, engineers in hard hats began their work, measuring, cataloging, surveying. They installed sensors. They drilled test holes. They mapped the talus pile stone by stone. But as the days passed, the inspections revealed more than rock. It started with the coins. Thousands of them, dimes, quarters, pennies, lodged in every crack and crevice. Decades of wishes, tossed by tourists, now glinting in the open air. Workers collected them by the handful. But then the discoveries took a darker turn. Among the stones, they found bones, human remains, scattered across the riverbed, wedged between boulders, tangled in the debris of the talus pile. Some were relatively recent. Others had been there for years, perhaps decades. Niagara Falls had always had a shadow side. For every honeymoon and every marvel, there had also been tragedy. People fell, people jumped, and when they did, the river swallowed them whole. The falls had never given them back, until now. The identities of some remains were eventually confirmed through forensic investigation. Others were never identified at all. To this day, the exact number of bodies found during the 1969 dewatering has never been officially disclosed. The reports mention only that several sets of human remains were recovered. But everyone who worked on that riverbed knew the truth. The falls weren't just a wonder, they were a grave. While the human discoveries haunted the workers, the engineers focused on their original mission, the talus. They studied the rock pile from every angle. They ran calculations, they debated options, and then they reached a conclusion that no one expected. The talus wasn't the problem. It was the solution. The pile of fallen debris, it turned out, was acting as a natural buttress, a support structure that had been stabilizing the cliff face for decades. Removing it wouldn't restore the falls. It would cause a catastrophic collapse. The very feature they had come to destroy was the only thing keeping the American Falls intact. This revelation forced an immediate pivot. The goal shifted from restoration to preservation. Instead of hauling away the talus, engineers reinforced the cliff with bolts, cables, and anchors. They installed monitoring systems, sensors that could detect the slightest movement in the rock. And then, after 5 months of silence, they made the decision. The cofferdam would come down. In November of 1969, crews began dismantling the dam. It didn't happen all at once. The water returned slowly at first, a trickle, then a stream, then a torrent. And then, with a sound that could be heard across the gorge, Niagara Falls roared back to life. The mist rose, the thunder returned, and once again, 6 million cubic feet of water per minute crashed against the ancient stone. But for those who had seen what lay beneath, for the workers, the engineers, the scientists who had walked on the dry riverbed, the falls would never look the same. They knew what the water was hiding. They had seen the bones. The 1969 dewatering project remains one of the most ambitious interventions ever attempted at a natural landmark. It proved that humanity could, if necessary, stop one of Earth's most powerful forces. But more importantly, it proved something else.
Nature doesn't always need fixing. The talus pile, the problem that had sparked decades of concern, was never a flaw. It was a feature, a natural adaptation that had kept the cliff from crumbling. The engineers came to remove it. They left having reinforced it. And in that pivot lies a lesson that extends far beyond Niagara Falls. We often assume we know better than the systems we study. We see imperfection and reach for intervention. But sometimes, the thing we're trying to fix is the very thing holding everything together.
In the decades since, officials have occasionally discussed a second dewatering, another inspection, another survey, another glimpse beneath the falls. So far, it hasn't happened. The logistics are immense, the cost is staggering, and perhaps, on some level, there's a reluctance to face what the water might reveal again. Because Niagara Falls has never stopped claiming lives. Every year, people fall, people jump, and the river takes them, just as it always has. The 1969 project gave us a window, a brief, surreal glimpse into what lies beneath one of Earth's greatest wonders. But the window is now closed, and the water has returned to keep its secrets. Today, Niagara Falls thunders on. 30 million visitors come every year to stand at the edge and feel the mist on their faces. They take photos, they toss coins, they marvel at the power. Most of them have no idea what lies beneath. They don't know about the summer of 1969, about the silence, the exposed rock, the bones scattered among the stones. And maybe that's for the best, because some places are more than what they appear. Some places are monuments and graves all at once. Niagara Falls is one of them, and the water keeps falling, hiding what it has always hidden, carrying what it has always carried, and roaring loud enough to drown out the questions we're too afraid to ask.